Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to dive right into the fascinating and honestly incredibly practical mechanics of the Eruv. If you've ever wondered exactly how Jewish communities manage all the complex logistics on Shabbat and Chagim, well, you are in the right place. We're going to explore this absolutely brilliant halachic system that was designed specifically to solve everyday challenges for us. Okay, so let's jump into this by picturing a super common real-world scenario. Imagine a family living in a yeshuv or maybe a bustling Jerusalem neighborhood. A long holiday weekend is coming up. You know the ones, a chog that leads straight into Shabbat. Right away, they're facing a bunch of immediate practical hurdles, like how do they cook fresh food for Shabbat? How do they carry a stroller over to their neighbors in the next building? And how can they walk out to visit relatives in a neighboring town? To figure out how they do all of that, here is our roadmap for today. We'll look at the secret of the Eruv, then break down the Eruv Tafshalin, Eruv Chatzarot, Eruv Reshviot, Eruv Tekhumin, and finally, wrap it all up with a practical summary. All right, starting with Section 1, the secret of Eruv and its core concepts. Now, you might be wondering, what actually is an Eruv? The word literally means mixing or blending. It's an ingenious legal mechanism instituted by the rabbis, and its entire purpose is to ease specific restrictions to make our observance livable. But, and this is a massive but, an eruv is only used to temper rabbinic decrees. It can never, under any circumstances, be used to bypass a core Torah law. It's this very delicate, beautiful halachic balance. Moving right along to Section 2, Eruv Tavshalin, which handles cooking for Shabbat. So tackling our family's first big challenge. How on earth do you cook for Shabbat when Friday is a holiday? Rabbinic law actually strictly forbids cooking on a holiday for the Shabbat that immediately follows it. You can cook for the chag itself, sure, but not for the next day. The brilliant workaround? The Eruv of cooked dishes, or Eruv Tavshalin. You basically start the cooking process for Shabbat before the holiday even kicks off. By doing that, you aren't starting anything new on the chag, you're literally just continuing what you already began. The application here is actually super straightforward. On the eve of the holiday, like Wednesday or Thursday night, the head of the household takes some bread and a cooked item, usually a hard-boiled egg. They recite a specific blessing and a declaration that this eruv gives the family permission to cook and bake during the holiday for Shabbat. Then you just set those two items aside, and ideally, you eat them during Sudo Shlishit, the third meal of Shabbat. It's a legal bridge, carrying your cooking from before the holiday directly into it. Okay, on to Section 3, Eruv Chatzarot, which is all about carrying in your neighborhood. Let's say our family has their food sorted, but now they need to bring a stroller or a hot dish over to their neighbors in a shared apartment complex on Shabbat. First, we have to look at the ground rules. Torah law absolutely bans carrying between a true public domain and a private domain. That's d'oraita. No eruv can fix that. But the rabbis added a preventative measure, a d'rabbanan. They said you can't carry between multiple private domains, like different apartments opening into a shared hallway, just so people don't get confused and accidentally carry into a real public space. To solve this rabbinic restriction, we bring in the Eruv Chatzarot, or the Eruv of courtyards. The whole goal here is to legally merge all of these individual separate apartments into one single shared domain. Think about it. If everyone is legally living in the exact same house, carrying between the rooms is totally fine. So how do we actually establish this joint ownership? Well, the common space needs to be fenced or delimited somehow. Then one person provides a loaf of bread or some food for everyone. Here's the cool part. Another resident takes it and lifts it up just 4 centimeters. That physical action legally claims joint ownership for all the neighbors. You say a specific blessing and declaration, keep the food accessible, and you're good to go. Most communities just do this once a year right before Shabbat Hagadol, and boom, it covers them for the whole year. Carrying within the complex is entirely permitted. Next up, Section 4, Erev Reshuyot, taking things out to the yeshiv borders. So let's build on what we just learned. What if our family wants to walk outside their apartment complex? What if they want to push that stroller through the streets of their entire yeshuv? Remember earlier we said an Eruv can't fix a Torah-level public domain? Well, Tractate Eruvin tells us that a true Torah public domain requires 600,000 people passing through it every single day. Because most modern streets, and definitely quiet yeshuv roads, don't have anywhere near that kind of foot traffic, they only fall under the rabbinic restriction. And since it's only a rabbinic restriction, an Eruv is the perfect solution. This brings us to the physical infrastructure you literally see all over Israel. The Eruv Rashuyot uses interconnected poles, they have to be at least 40 centimeters high, with a wire running right over the top of them. This creates a virtual fence, known as a Tzurat HaPetach, or doorway shape. By wrapping the entire city or yeshuv with this wire, the whole area is legally transformed into a single domain. It brilliantly resolves the rabbinic boundary and lets everyone carry freely on Shabbat. Finally, Section 5, Eruv Techumen, for when you need to walk far. Let's say our family wants to visit relatives in a neighboring yeshuv that's a pretty good distance away. The Torah clearly says in Exodus, "Let no man go out of his place on the seventh day." The oral law actually defines this place as a really large 20-kilometer perimeter from wherever you happen to be when Shabbat starts. However, rabbinic law clamps down on that walking distance significantly. They set a strict boundary of just 2,000 cubits, which is basically about 1 kilometer, outside the city limits. Once you hit that 1 kilometer mark outside your town, you are stuck. You cannot go further. So, if the neighboring yeshuv is, say, 1.5 kilometers away, our family has a problem. But to safely extend this distance within the law, we pull out our fourth tool, the Eruv Tukumin, or the Eruv of borders. Here is the absolute genius of this practical workaround. Before Shabbat or the holiday begins, you just walk out to the very edge of that 2,000 cubit boundary and leave enough food for 2 meals right there. By doing this, halacha considers that specific spot to be your official dwelling for the day. And since you're always allowed to walk 2,000 cubits from your dwelling, you can now walk an additional 2,000 cubits from that food stash. You've essentially moved your home base, doubling your total possible walking distance to 4,000 cubits in that direction. And that brings us to Section 6, a quick summary of Eruvin in practice. Let's put this all together and see how this complete system solves everything for our family. The Eruv Tavshalin is your workaround to cook for Shabbat on a chog. The Eruv Hatzarot solves carrying in a shared apartment complex. The Eruv Reshuyot covers you for carrying in the wider streets of your town. And the Eruv Techumin lets you walk way beyond that standard 1 kilometer limit. Every single one of these tools safely and practically navigates rabbinic boundaries to solve real, everyday logistical hurdles. It proves that our observance is absolutely faithful to the Torah while still being beautifully practical to live out. So, as you head into the upcoming Chageg, think about these incredible mechanics we just talked about. How will your new understanding of these mitzvot deepen your connection to our practical halacha? And more importantly, which of these profound tools will you be using to elevate your own family's holiday experience?